Yama. This is Welcome in Gamilaroi, the land I grew up on in northern New South Wales. My name is Ellen Forsyth and I work at the State Library of New South Wales. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which each of the libraries we're in stand. And today it is actually many libraries, and so it is many traditional custodians that I'm acknowledging. We pay respects to Aboriginal elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other First Nations people. We celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal cultures and languages across Australia. As well, we acknowledge the contribution that people of many nations have made to this country. And look, I have to say thank you so much for your flexibility in being willing to participate this way. Some of you had booked to participate online, but I thank you that the rest of you have been prepared to come online for this. If you are sharing about this on social media, please use hashtag RA2020. It would be great if you could post a photograph of how you're participating in this 100% online seminar. So first up, we will hear from Kathy Stewart, who I have to admit I was really looking forward to meeting in real life, but COVID-19 happened.
COVID-19 happened, yes.
Still meet with Kathy this way is really exciting. So I'm going to hand over to Kathy Stewart now from NoveList so we can learn how to better flex those NoveList muscles. So thank you very much, Kathy. Now, just before I hand over, please put your questions through chat and Kathy will get to them later on.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks for the introduction and thanks to everyone for being here. I know it's really difficult times right now. As Ellen mentioned, my trip to Australia was canceled. Was just so hoping to be there in person, very disappointed, but very happy to be able to share some information with you regardless. So I'm hoping that you can see the NoveList screen in all of its full color. I'm a librarian. I've worked for NoveList for, about 13 years now, and I spent equal amount of time working as a librarian in a public library in the U.S., and I started out as a children's librarian, and then I became a branch manager. So I've really done quite a few things in a public library setting, and I use NoveList very heavily throughout my time in the library land, as we call it. So I'm very excited to talk about NoveList. So I thought what I would do is, because we just have an hour, I know it's not really that long to be able to tell you about all the things NoveList can do or ways NoveList can help you. But I thought that I would kind of hit some highlights and hopefully point out some things that you can return to and explore a little more fully and get some benefit of that knowledge in that way. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a walkabout of the homepage. So notice front and center, we have what we call this banner section in the middle, and we use this to highlight things that we want to make sure that that people are aware of, resources that we've gathered, of course, to help libraries as we all navigate this illness and this time. So you can always click through and just be taken to some really pertinent information right there from the banner in the homepage. So that's one thing I wanted to point out right away. If you're not aware already, on the left here, we've got what we call our recommended reads lists. I just highlighted those, and you'll see that we have them for both fiction and nonfiction, and we have them at all different kinds of age levels, adult, teen, as you see here, older kids, younger kids. So I don't want to go through all of them, of course. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them and point out ones that I thought would be especially helpful to you. Just know that our librarians put these lists together. They choose up to 20 different titles on these lists. They're not intended to be representative of a particular genre or subject area, but really they're intended to kind of reflect the latest, greatest titles. So just know that they update them yearly, usually actually more often than that. And so you can always rest assured that if you just need some quick ideas for books to read or to recommend, that they would be a great source to turn to. So I want to just call out a couple of those. We've added lists particular to Australia and New Zealand that you'll see here. I've opened up that link so that you can see all the different ones we've added, including some that I thought you would be hopefully excited about if you don't know about them already. Best Fiction of 2019. We do that here in the U.S. as well, and so we update those yearly just to help you. And then over on the right, in case you do book clubs, we have Book Club Best Bets kind of picks that would make really excellent books to use for discussion. So just in case you didn't know about those, I wanted to make sure to point those out because I think that they might be especially helpful to you. So you'll see here we're defaulted at the adult level. I also wanted to point out a couple of other kinds of lists. We've got what we call these for fans of lists. And these came about in kind of an interesting way. We've got some novelist we've got. So if everyone doesn't mind muting, as Ellen was mentioning, I'm getting a little bit of background noise. So thanks. So these are lists that our librarians put together to really think about kind of how to have that conversation with readers who come into the library. They might ask you about what might be a good book to read. So just to help you kind of get that conversation started, or maybe to use these for display, you'll see that we've got lots of lists that reflect different television shows, different movies, and our librarians just took the appeal characteristics of those shows or movies and then kind of turned those into linking them with the kinds of appeal factors that are represented by the books on each of these lists. So these are really excellent way to, again, just kind of begin some of those conversations. There are up to 20 titles on each of these lists as well, and they make a really fun way to have a conversation with your patrons coming into the library. You can have some good conversations if they ask you about what's a great book, but they don't really, they're not able to articulate to you kind of what they're interested in. You can always ask them what they binge watched and maybe use that as a great starting point for a conversation. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about those lists just in case you don't. And we are here at the adult level. So I wanted to call out just a couple of other different lists at the adult level. Under fiction A to Z, you might like, especially this time, just kind of in a somber time period for everybody, we actually have a list called Uplit that represents books. It's not like there's no strife in these books, but they always end happily. So those might be a nice source to recommend to readers just about now. We also have book club best bets here. And then we also have a list not just for teens. I know that a lot of adults actually like reading teen books, so these are really good picks and might be a good list for you to come back again and just take a little bit closer look at and just see what you think about that. So those are just a couple of different lists I wanted to highlight for you at the adult level. So at the teen level, just as with the adult level, we've got those for fans of lists. They're a little bit different, as you would imagine, because of the different kinds of movies and things that kids are interested in. You'll see that Billie Eilish has a for fans of list, and Lizzo. And that movie that came out, All the Boys I've Loved Before, we've got a list for that. So take a peek at this list, come back to this, and I think that you'll find some good stuff here. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. We also have Australian fiction lists here at the teen level. And then also, we've added these lists that we call all kinds of lives. We know how important it is for kids to see themselves in literature, so we wanted to speak to that and make sure that we included books in which teens and maybe those who work with teens could find so that they could see themselves or either read about kids who are not like them. So All Kinds of Lives is a great book list to visit if that's something that's a need that you have. So check that out under teens. Under older kids, again, got that same All Kinds of Life list. And we also have Australian fiction, also have for fans of, as you can see as I move down the page. And then differently with that age group, we've got If You Like. So if kids come in asking for a particular book title, maybe they've read Harry Potter or Captain Underpants, those are popular here in the U.S., you might just check these out because they have a lot of different read-alikes that I think kids would go for too. So I wanted to mention those. For the very young, we also have Australian fiction lists, but these take a little bit different form, as you can imagine, delving a little bit more into picture books. So we tried to break those up a little bit into categories that we thought would be useful, including read-alouds. So be sure to come back and take a look at those. And then instead of that, If You Like kind of list. We have an I feel list for the very young. As I mentioned, I'm a children's librarian. I did quite a few story times in working with both children and parents, and often had parents coming in asking about books just to fit a certain situation that their child was encountering, whether they were all of a sudden scared of certain situations, or maybe just feeling a little bit naughty or wanting to be noisy to play. So you'll find some books that, again, would help with those kinds of questions that you might get, and also lend themselves to displays as well. And something I wanted to point out too that I think would be pretty helpful for anybody who works with kids is these always in demand lists, because I remember just from my years of service working with kids, there were always books that never seemed to go out of style. Things that move, robots, dinosaurs, those are things that are just sort of evergreen and always popular, so wanted to make sure that you knew about those lists. So all of these are here on the left on the home page right as you jump into NoveList, and you can see that you can toggle back and forth between fiction and nonfiction very easily. So we've got some great nonfiction lists as well. So those were all here, the top left panel, so wanted to point those out. So something, I'm moving over to the right here into this center section, and I made my screen really big to kind of exaggerate it just so you can see really easily. But usually you can see more of the page at a time. So just beware when you come back into NoveList, it's not quite this big. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our appeal terms. Those are something that NoveList is known for, and you'll see that it's what we lead with. Right here under the that banner I was talking about earlier, it's one of the things we think is most important about NoveLists. We've got this unique appeal language, and you'll see as I click through into this appeal mixer, we've got a way for both you and the readers you serve to interact with those appeal terms. And it's really actually pretty fun to do, to mix and match. So I wanted to show you how to click through to that in case you haven't. You'll see that we kind of jump-started those appeal combinations with these carousels that I'm kind of moving on through here. And I wanted to take you to a book, just in case you haven't noticed this book. We actually have a book that we call The Secret Language of Books that, once again, really speaks to that experience in that language. So I'm going a little bit slowly so you can see how to click through. There's a link that's titled Learn More About Story Elements. I'm going to make that larger, and I know Ellen's recording this, so you'll have all of this information. But I wanted to show you where this is and show you that from within NoveList, you can click right on through and open this up and download it. You can download it if you want and print it out, or you could just know that you can always access it from within NoveList. So I especially wanted to share this because I know that you, I'm hoping that you will be listening to Becky Spratford present later on. I've heard Becky present. She's really dynamite, and I know she's going to talk to you a little bit about different appeal terms that relate to horror, different tone appeal terms especially. So as I scroll through this, notice that there are all these different terms. They are defined. You can get at all these different kinds of tone terms for sure. That will be really helpful to you when you hear more about horror. But just in general use, you can just really think about how you might help those readers who come in wanting a book that has an inspiring tone, or maybe kind of a reflective tone or a quiet tone. Whatever it is that your reader is in the mood for, you have a way to access those terms and find them. And then hopefully your readers can then find those terms again and keep going and keep accessing the things that are most important to them. So we got to that book here under this link, How Do I Find Books by Appeal? That's where we just were. And I'm going to scroll back up and once again point out that appeal mixer, just in case you haven't seen it, because the cool thing about this is that because it's a drop-down, you or your readers can choose anything of interest to you, whether you want a particular kind of character, whether you want to think about pace, like something I know that's really kind of interesting, especially with the horror genre, is intensifying. And those are books that start out slow and then they get more and more creepy. So just know that you can mix and match some of those characteristics, and then you get presented with this nice carousel that gives you, in this case, more than 700 results. You can scroll through that carousel and just click into any of these book jackets and get more information. So you can do that, and you can start to combine other characteristics with those appeal terms. So I'm going to take you back to the home page, which you can always do by clicking on that NoveList Plus icon. And so I just wanted you again to see kind of where we were. So we were here under this appeal kind of area here. And you'll see that as I scroll over these tabs, that carousel changes because we front loaded this with appeal language combinations that really hopefully will be ones that might be of interest to you or to your readers. So that's the first thing I wanted to tell you about. And again, something that's very particular to NoveList is our appeal language. We're quite proud of it. So the next thing I wanted to show you, just again, in case you don't know, is the ability to browse by genre. So this next section has these different sections that are broken into audience age levels here. So for the adult browse genre section that I've just clicked into, you've got a couple ways to go here. If you wanted to just kind of see what's here, you can always just let that page load, and it's just going to take a moment. It's in alphabetical order by genre. That's how it presents. So you can see as I scroll down that that's one way to go. If you're helping a reader or patron with a question and they don't really maybe have a sense of what genre they might be most interested in, you could just take a look at this page with them and just kind of scroll down and take a look. But otherwise, I'm scrolling back up to show you that we do have a drop down. So you actually can go right to whatever genre might be most of interest to them or to you as you're doing the work that you do. Notice that we've got a category for Australian and New Zealand literature. So with each of these sections, we always include a forthcoming section. So if you wanted to see kind of what to expect next, what's kind of coming down the pike, you can do that. And there's a nice carousel so you can kind of click through there. So I wanted to show you that. And you can see that there are categories for Australian fiction, New Zealand fiction, and then also nonfiction. And with any of these, if you want to view all of the choices, because you're only getting just a subset with the jackets that are featured in this carousel, if you clicked on View All, it will take you to all Australian fiction that's offered in NoveList. So that's always an option available to you. So I wanted just to make sure that you knew that it was there and you could know how to access that. So I wanted to show you that. Notice too that as we go over the genre browse area, that the default is always adult, but you can click on different audience levels, and you'll see that you can click on all the genres for that teen age level, or you could focus on international titles, whether Canadian, Australian, New Zealander authors, they're all there. Same goes for older kids. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see international titles and also different genres and also nonfiction. And then same is true for the very young with that
Thank you.
0 to 8 age group. So I just wanted to show you that they're there and where you can find particularly Australian and New Zealander authors, and just know that you can get right to those quickly if that's a need that you have. So I'm going to click back on that NoveList Plus logo to take us back to the home page. And then just once again, just reorient you just a little bit about where we just were. So you see those recommended reads lists on the left. We've got that appeal language and those browse genres. So I wanted to show you all of those just pieces, just the kind of things I wanted to most call out from the home page and make sure that you knew where all of those different aspects, where they all live. So that's a little bit about the home page. So now I thought I would actually take you to a couple of searches. So I don't know if you know, but at NoveList, we actually have a book club at NoveList. And we read Australian literature. And the first book we read was this one. And I love this book. Seemed to be a very polarizing book, though. People either really loved it or they just didn't know what it was all about and just weren't sure about all the drugs, etc. But I thought it was great. So I wanted to show you, again, just kind of what you can expect as you click into a book record. So first of all, if you're not aware, we've got these read-alikes on the far right panel. So I'm highlighting it now. And if you hover over a jacket, both you or your reader, anybody who's using NoveList, you can immediately see why a book is being recommended as a great read-alike for Boy Swallows Universe. So know that we offer quite a few what we call handcrafted read-alikes, and you'll see that this one is by someone on our staff, Kim Burton, who's a Reader's Advisory librarian, and she's also the person who develops the content that we offer for book clubs. So she put together this read-alike, and we've got lots of folks on our staff who do that. And we also have NoveList, what we call NoveList contributors or advisors. So if anybody is interested, by the way, in becoming a NoveList advisor, we would love to have you. And you can get my contact information from Ellen, and I can tell you all about it. It would be wonderful to have you. So just know that your readers or you can rely on that reasoning language to let you know whether Skippy Dies might be a book that your reader might be interested in based on kind of the call-outs that are offered in that reasoning language. So note one other thing. We take feedback really seriously at NoveList, and you can see that there's a thumbs up or thumbs down icon here. So as you start to kind of tune into those read-alikes, and your patrons also, let us know what you think about them. We look at this spreadsheet that we have from these thumbs up and thumbs down. We look at it every week, and we make adjustments based on the feedback that we get. Some people might say things like, hey, this is spot on, thanks so much. Or they might say, you know what, I don't agree with you, and here's why. So we like to know, and we make adjustments and make different book recommendations, etc., based on the feedback that we get. So just know that those are there. There are up to 9 over here on the right, and so you can just click right into those and be taken to more information about that particular book. So it's a nice resource to have. So I wanted to make sure to mention those. And also, just wanted to call out a little bit once again about not only our appeal language, but also just the different kinds of and pieces of metadata that you see here that are part of a book record. So first of all, see that we always include this definition of appeal terms link so that you can find and get a list of all of the terms that you see here. So maybe you or your reader want to know a little bit more about what does flawed exactly mean, or what does reflective mean to NoveList. So know that we have those defined so that our catalogers can consistently apply those appeal characteristics to all the titles that they do cataloging for. So sympathetic is always sympathetic. Character-driven is always character-driven, whereas with crowdsourcing, one person's version of sympathetic might not mesh. So just know that that gives us that consistency that you and your readers can rely on, and that's kind of how we do it. So I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to know that when you think about terms like genre, often most of us might think in terms of really traditional genre headings, and we definitely have those, but we also have ones like this one, adult books for young adults. This isn't really a traditional genre per se, but it's one that we added as an access point to help readers find the kinds of books that they like. So this might be helpful to you, or you might like some of the other ones of that nature. We call them library helper headings. It could be books for reluctant readers or books that have been made into movies. So there are different headings that we do that we call genre to give you the kind of access points that we hope are very helpful to you. So that's kind of the intent and the kind of a little bit of the why with the things that you see here. So when I was talking about those appeal terms, those most often refer to things like storyline, pacing, tone, the kinds of characters. Those are the kinds of things that give books their feel. So feel is what leads readers to books and often leads to the kind of book that they decide to choose. So all of those components, those characteristics, we call story elements because they're all things that help readers decide what they might like to read or sometimes what they don't want to read. So those are all great. And the thing that we've added most recently to that stable of definitely those story elements is what we call themes. So themes are really cool because unlike those components that give a book its feels, these are more about the plot structure, kind of the setup of the story, and that way readers really know what they're getting. So maybe somebody in kind of a disruptive times like right now, maybe people want some really comfortable, cozy mysteries because they want to tune out the world right now and get something that's just this straight up cozy mystery story. Themes allow readers to find those books and make it really easy for them to get to just the right kind of books that they're most interested in. So I wanted to show you, this is one way that you can always find information about themes that have to do with a particular title. So with this book, it's got the theme of unhappy families and unlikely friendships. Those are the two themes that have been assigned to this particular book. But if you wanted to do this in a little bit of a different way, and go right to all the list of all the themes, I wanted to show you where to find those. So if we go up to the very top page, you'll see I'm hovering over some different links here. And as I hover, you'll see that there's a drop down. So one other way that you can access a list of themes from any page in NoveList, so no matter what you're searching, if you wanted just to really quickly switch gears or pivot, you could do that. So if I click on themes, you'll see that we've got this whole page of themes that you can browse. And the thing I think that you'll like so much about these themes is that they're all related to different genres. And our catalogers, I wish you could be a fly on the wall as they did this process. It took them a couple of years. They worked really hard to get it right. And they had a great time naming these different themes. So just because today is all about horror, I'm going to click into the horror one. But know that this page is here. You can get to it really easily and just take a peek at all of the other ones. But just because of today, I thought you might like to see some of the ones that just represent the kind of the tropes and the themes that come up most often within the horror genre. So you'll see things like Band of Survivors, Creepy Clowns, Don't Go In There, Final Girls, which I love that term, just the lone female survivors. So all these different themes are just fun. They're a fun way to really think about the genre. If it's a genre that's not one familiar to you, as horror is definitely not one of my comfort zones, I don't know a lot about it. It's a great way to kind of figure out what kind of tropes there are and just get a sense of, okay, so these are the kinds of things that readers might like. So it's a great way, again, to have a beginning conversation with the reader. So if they tell you they like horror, then you're all set because you can come here, browse these themes with your reader and just see if anything resonates with them and kind of take it from there. Each of these is easy to get to, and there are different ways that you can search these themes, definitely in NoveList. So I just wanted to show you a couple of ways to get there really quickly. So while we're up here at kind of this toolbar at the top, I just wanted to show you one other area that I think will be very useful to you that I'm actually going to linger over for just a sec so you can see all the different categories here. This would be a great one for you to come back and visit and just click into some of these. And we put them here just so you can see some of our most popular pieces of content along with this way to get to those really quickly. So I mentioned before book clubs, and I wanted to click into this just to show you that we've got a number of resources devoted to book clubs because we know so many libraries do them that we thought we had put together a page to make it very easy to find all the different things that might be useful to you. So first of all, you can see in a very visual way all the book club, the book discussion guides rather, that have been most recently added. So you can see those visually by the jackets on the left. You've got a hyperlink here so that if you wanted just to browse all the book discussion guides and just kind of scroll through all of them in NoveList, you definitely could do that as well. And I recommend that you do if you haven't already. I know that it only takes one time with being asked to fill in to do a book discussion when you haven't read the book. I've been in that situation myself, and it's not fun. It's quite stressful. So if you wanted to lead a discussion effectively, even if it's one that you know you're going to do, our book discussion guides are great because they give you a little plot synopsis, so you don't have any surprises, or if you need to reread that book very quickly, you can do that. But the best thing, I think, is that they have discussion starter questions. That way, if you have to lead it, or maybe if you want to be able to print this out and share it with some of your patrons who have book clubs, you could do that. But they have not only discussion starters, but also answers. So you've got some nice notes to kind of, just be a little bit of a comfort to you as you're leading that discussion. So each of those, they're really well done, and I think that if you haven't seen them before, that you might benefit from taking a quick look. They're really great. So you can do that. And then we've got quite a few, again, articles from contributors that I mentioned earlier, folks across the country, across the globe, who do things like programming and book clubs. And so they share their expertise here in the form of these short articles that not only give suggestions for ways to do book clubs, but just all the different aspects of that kind of programming, what some of the challenges are and how they've overcome them. So can't say enough good things about this section. It's quite helpful. So wanted to point that out. The other thing that I thought you might find super useful are the genre outlines. So again, I'm picking on horror today only because it's the day of horror, but also, again, it's just not one of my comfort genres that I know a lot about. So you'll see that we've got more than 60 of those genre outlines, and we call those getting up to speed. So you can really quickly familiarize yourself with a genre that you may not know a lot about. So notice on the left, as I scroll down, we've got all of these different ways you can refine results. You can refine by audience level. There's some additional limiters here by fiction, by nonfiction, but also horror. So if I wanted to just immediately kind of winnow down that list to just the ones that are focused on horror, I could quickly do that by just clicking on that limiter on the left, as I did. So the thing that you'll love about the genre outlines is just sort of like those book club, those book discussion guides that I was just showing you. These just give you kind of some talking points about a genre. Tells you a little bit about why readers like it, kind of the setup, what usually happens in that kind of genre, and then also some key titles and authors that you might want to know about. Often, depending on the genre, if there are crossovers into other genres, that'll get called out, just so you've got some talking points, some directions to go in, and you've got a way to get yourself kind of up to speed really quickly. So wanted to mention those. And where we found both of these things, those book discussion guides and also these genre outlines, were under that quick link at the top. So it's accessible on every page in NoveList. So you can find that really super quickly, no matter where you are or what you're searching for. So I wanted to tell you about those. So now let me do, I'm going to click back to the home page, and I want to do a search for another book because I like and respect Becky so much, and because I don't like to be that person who doesn't read certain genres. I just decided I just better just go for it and just read a horror book. And so that's what I did. And as Ellen mentioned, I was planning to come in person to this session, and I was going to be so pleased to be able to tell Becky that I read a horror book. So I read The Cabin at the End of the World, and if you haven't read it, it is incredibly creepy. So it may not be your cup of tea, but I read it. I have to say the pacing was very interesting, and I read it quickly because it just lends itself to reading quickly. That's all I'm going to say. So the things I wanted to point out here is, which I didn't point out with the earlier search, is if you wanted to get right to those read-alikes, whether it's title read-alikes, author ones, or in case a book is a series, you'll also get a hyperlink for series read-alikes. You can go right to those and print them out, to look at them, whatever, without having to click all the way into the book record. So I mention that because I know that there are plenty of times that you might get a question from someone. They just want another book suggestion. They don't have a lot of time. You could just go right to this, email it, or print it out for them, and they can be on their way. So I wanted to point out you can get to that really quickly. I also wanted to point out, because there's so many readers who are part of the Goodreads community, that we have links through to Goodreads. So anybody who likes to note what books they read, keep track of them, share them with others, or get recommendations, they've got a way to access that from right here within the book record, or without having to go into the book record. So they can see that here. So I wanted to show you that. The other thing I wanted to do is click right into this record. And again, we were talking about all that metadata. I didn't mention before that if a book is an award winner, you'll see that noted here by the blue ribbon. So that's something helpful to know. Something else I want to call out and to challenge all of you on is we've added this characteristic, this piece of metadata in NoveList that we call media mentions. So we've added this because we've had so much feedback about people who mention that patrons come into their libraries, they say they've heard about a book on a particular TV show or radio, and they wanted a way to search those things in NoveList. And so we added media mentions, which is great. But what we don't know at NoveList is what kinds of media mentions would be relevant to you in Australia and New Zealand. We don't know what those shows are for you. So if you have thoughts about those, again, Ellen has my contact information, and we would really love to hear those because we want to add that functionality for all of you. So help us get there and let us know what would be useful to you, and we will do it. So I wanted to show you that, but I also wanted to show you, again, themes called out here, the different ones as we saw earlier. And I mentioned a way to get to themes by going to that drop down at the very top screen, but I also wanted to show you another way. So if you go down a little further in this book record, you'll see that there are reviews, which are really helpful if this is a book that you're not familiar with, to get more information about it. And if you keep going down, you'll see that we've got this whole search for more section. So if you actually have different readers who are only interested in a certain aspect of this book, maybe the tone, they want other books that are very suspenseful, or they want other books in which the subject, the end of the world, is discussed, or books that fit that theme, Band of Survivors. All you have to do is click just any of those ticky boxes or combinations of those and hit search, and you can isolate to particular characteristics that are of interest to your readers. So I wanted to show you that because that's another way to find particular appeal factors or themes, books that share just those characteristics. And then another way to do it too is with a search. So I wanted to direct your attention again up to the top under these quick links. There's one called How Do I? And How Do I probably represents, I would say, 90% of the questions that we've gotten chatted into us via this feedback section that's over here on the right. So these all made the How Do I list because they got asked most frequently. So one of the things I wanted to show you is at the very bottom, learn how to use NoveList. We've got some good stuff in here. And one of the good things in there, this is too small for you to see, but no worries. We're going to keep going here because I just wanted to show you that we've got some things to help you, and that is field codes. So field codes are not something that's part of your Reader's Advisory repertoire when you use NoveList. You'll want to take a look at this, what we call cheat sheet, because it lists out the ones that are used most commonly. And then I'll show you how to put those in a search string so that you can really get to things more quickly from the search bar that's on every page in NoveList. So first up, appeal factors, the code for that is AP for appeal. So any of those characteristics we were talking about, whether it's funny, whether it's that pacing, like intensifying, whether it's maybe a writing style that your patron's most interested in, just know that you can get to those very quickly. Same goes for genre. There are a couple on here that I think that you would use probably pretty frequently, and so I'm trying to call out those so that you can find them on this sheet. Review is another great one because if you look at some of those reviews in NoveList, you'll start to see that same language that gets used over and over by reviewers, and I'm trying to highlight read aloud here, not very successfully, or maybe a beach read, or there are just certain phrases that you'll see reviewers use. So sometimes that's a great way to search for a book in NoveList. Just search for a phrase used in that review language. So I wanted to show you that. And then if there is some NoveList content that you start to become a big fan of, you can do this NoveList document type. So you could search for book discussion guides very quickly as well. So I wanted to show you that. And all that to say that if you wanted just to search for a particular theme, you could do that. So we could search for Band of Survivors by using that two-letter code TH. So if you just do that, you'll get a nice search result that'll give you all the books that have a band of survivors. So notice when you get that, you might not get the results that you're expecting because the first two choices really don't make you think about a band of survivors. I associate that with horror or with, I guess with fantasy as well. But just know that, again, if you go over to the limiters on your left, you can really start to kind of, with the drop downs here, open up to genre. So if you instead wanted Band of Survivor as it applies to horror books, you could just isolate those horror books and get some different kinds of results. And then do further limiting. You'll see that these are some kids' choices. You might want just adult books. You can come back over to adult, update, and then just keep going. So that search result was for more than 200 books, and you can just kind of keep going and break it down a little more. So I just wanted to show you again just a couple of ways to think about using some shortcuts with those field codes, which I think hopefully will help you as you're thinking about different ways to do searches and kind of get to some information really quickly. So one other thing I'll show you too is if you wanted to, again, use that two-letter field code for genre, this is how you would search for the horror genre. And so I want to, again, just show you some ways to think about using some limiters on your left that maybe you haven't noticed. So you'll see that we've got more than 4,000 results. On the left, I just opened up that additional limiters panel, the drop-down rather, over here on the left panel, so that you could see there are lots of different ways to limit those big set of search results. If you wanted to only see books that are forthcoming, that's an easy way to do it. Same goes for starred review. But something that we added not too long ago that I want to make sure that you're aware of are these two boxes that let you either include or exclude series titles. So if you've got readers who only want series books, they just love having a big stack with lots of different choices, they want to stay with those characters, if you just click on include, then the search results, as you can see, will get you books that are part of a series. And you know from using NoveList that series information is always called out in the way that you see here so that you can see which book is part of a series and what number it is within the series. And then notice how this changed. Those series read-alikes appeared also so that you can search or go right to a particular kind of read-alike. So alternatively, if my reader or my patron did not want series, I could instead click the exclude title and they'll see only titles that are standalones. So I just wanted to show you, I know that, again, that's just something that is important to readers. It depends what they like and what they're in the mood for, and you've got a way to get to that information really quickly. So those were a couple of other things I wanted to show you and tell you a little bit about. So the other thing that you can do is really start to then get a sense of a little bit of nuance. So you could do something like start to combine things. I think I was telling you before about AP being the 2-letter code for appeal factors. So if you wanted to get adult books that are in horror genre that have that nice intensifying building suspense kind of as a little bit of the appeal that your readers might really go for, you've got a way to get to those books and really start thinking about putting some combinations together and thinking about those different characteristics that make a lot of sense. So this search is pretty straightforward, but you could actually make these search strings really long and really kind of get very specific. So if you've got that discerning reader who comes in, they have a certain kind of book that they like, maybe it's horror that's set in a certain locale, you've got all those ways because we've got limiters and NoveList to add those characteristics. And then you can do this cool thing. There's something called this RSS feed that's over here that you could click on share. So for any search result or search string rather that you come up with, if you wanted to immediately make sure that you don't lose that one because maybe it was hard to construct and maybe your reader was so satisfied with the results that you want to be able to replicate that and let them know when NoveList adds a book that meets that criteria, all you have to do is do what I did, click here, and then you can actually see and set forth how frequently you would like to get that information, then click Save Alert. So I kind of took you out of order because what you would then do with that information is you would capture it over on the right with your folders. So you can see that I'm signed in because it recognizes that I'm Kathy. So anyone who doesn't know about folders or have an account, you would see sign in here. And all you have to do is set up an account one time, and then you can really benefit from using those folders and taking advantage of things like search alerts. So I'm going to click into my folder and show you what you can expect to see as you do that. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger because I know it's hard to read. So notice on the left, the far left, I have quite a few different folders set up over here because I use them all the time for work that I do and also work that I remember doing when I worked at the library. So I've got things to keep track of all the books I've read because I find that difficult, and I like to do it from within NoveList because I'm in NoveList all the time. I was somebody who prepared books for story time quite often, and so I started thinking about different ways to search for storytime books. And you'll see that I gathered quite a few books and some articles about how to do storytime. So these can be really useful. And the nice thing about these folders and the contents within the folders is that in that scenario I was giving you, if you had a reader who liked a certain kind of book, you came up with a great search string, and then you wanted to email them those results, you can do that from within your folders. You'll see that you can print out a list or email it. So you could do that for your patrons. You could also share these folders amongst yourselves with your colleagues. And I think they make a really great time saver. So I wanted to mention what a fan I am of folders. And then notice on the left, some of my choices here are search alerts. And so I created several of them just so I wanted you to see the kinds of things that I had thought of. So this is one, number 2 here. The book that won the Newbery Award in the U.S. was an author I'd never heard of. And so I thought, I don't want to miss anything. If you write something else, I want to know about it. So if you have a patron interested in a particular author, you don't have to think about it. Just set up one of these and you'll get a notification from NoveList, a little email. Hey, there's a book by Jerry Craft, and then you can email your patron. And so in that scenario of thinking about books for story time, because we've got some really great appeal language and characteristics, we've actually got some that let you know about the kind of illustration books have. So this is a search alert that I set up that lets me know when books that have really nice big and bold art, that have mention in the review language of being a read aloud, that are funny, that are at the picture book level, get added to NoveList. So I set this up once a month, and then I get a little ping from NoveList, a little email that lets me know that, hey, here's 5 books that meet this criteria. So then I can go look at those and see if those are ones that I want to add to my stable of storytime books. And then you can see too, if you've got, you're leading a certain kind of book discussion group, you could just set forth a search alert where you add a search for historical fiction for which there's a book discussion guide. So you get the idea. I just wanted to show you different ways, and there's the horror one with intensifying. So I just want to show you several ways that I think it could be pretty helpful to take advantage of some of those ability to get to some of that nuance that really makes drilling down very easy and helpful for both you and your readers. So I'm keeping my eye on the time here to make sure that I don't go over, and I realize I did not check chat because I have to stop sharing, so I didn't want to halt that. So I'm hoping that Ellen can chime in and let me know if there are any other questions. There's one more thing I wanted to show you that I thought would be kind of helpful for you to really think about, again, combining different kinds of metadata. So I wanted to show you a couple things before we stop. One is just how well all the metadata works together. So as we were talking about pieces of metadata like subjects, if you do a subject search, you get some great results. Subject of friends, very general, big and broad. That's great, and it's helpful. You'll see that there are 9,000 results. Maybe I want to limit to kids. I've got a parent coming in with a child, so I'm limiting to older kids. So we'll see how that reduces the search results. That brings it down to 2,000. So these are great, but maybe your parent wants books that are, kind of ones that have a happy ending, to make sure that they're not distressing in any way about bad friendships. You can choose that books that have that appeal factor, upbeat, assigned to them. So you can make sure that the books that their children are introduced to are friendship books that have a happy ending. So that took it down quite a bit to 175. So that just gets a little bit more of a nuance that your reader might be looking for. You can also sort by the new estates, however you would like to sort. So one of the things that's really cool, though, when you think about that kind of thing, this is where themes can be really useful, because what if instead that parent came in and said, oh, my child, I need some good books about friendship. And after you have a little bit more of a conversation, you understand that, oh no, their child has a kind of a sad situation in which they used to be friends, they're not anymore. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about just being familiar with the metadata. Really lets you see the power of that metadata so that you can see that, yes, you can find friendship books. Yes, you can find ones that are happy. You also can really get at particulars using a combination of all the different pieces of metadata that you can find from within NoveList. So I wanted to go back up to this How Do I section so that we can end here on how to use NoveList. So when I click through, you'll be able to see from the recording a little bit more of the detail of this page. But I wanted to end on our Learn Center because it's got really great stuff that I think you'll want to come back and definitely visit. So I'm going to make this page just a little bit bigger once again to show you all the different things that you can find here. So we've got a lot of different tips, we've got guides, we've got things like these search strategies that are very short and very particular to different pieces of information that you'll find helpful in finding books for readers who like gentle reads, or books that are just right for kids, or books about a particular genre. So you'll find some specifics here and some strategies to do some of those kind of complicated searches that we were alluding to. We've also got a lot of training information. If you wanted to have a little novelist kind of session with all staff, we've got a guide, it's got a PowerPoint, it's got talking points, and we've got all different kind of materials that would really lend themselves to putting together a mini novelist training at your own library. So that's something else that you might be interested in. And we've got this section called the latest. You can actually do an RSS feed here from this page, because we've got a lot of blog posts that we add regularly that update you on different things going on, different enhancements that we've added to NoveList. So having an RSS feed like that would be a really great way to kind of keep up with all things NoveList. So that's something, if you like your information that way, you can take advantage of. But also our newsletters. We've got a subscription page. We've got a newsletter that comes out every month. It's very short and sweet, and it would be great, again, just as a means of keeping up with kind of the latest, greatest in NoveList. So I wanted to stop there and just check and see if there are any questions. So let me stop sharing and check the chat.
Kathy, people haven't been asking a lot of questions yet, so while people are thinking about that, I've got a question while other people are putting it forward.
Of course.
Have you noticed that there's been an increase in, I don't know, searches for happy things on NoveList when things are kind of a bit grim?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. We've been talking about that. We haven't actually done any analysis of searches yet, but that would be a very interesting thing to kind of put together and just see if there are. I think that we've been kind of monitoring what different users and folks are doing in terms of kind of information needs that they have for things like story time or resources. So we have been monitoring that kind of thing, but now I'm interested to know. So I'll have to put that to our team and just see if we could find out about that.
When you find out, let me know. I'm actually going to answer
that's a great
Shazia's question on the side, because it's actually around, do you need to pay? Shazia, there's a statewide subscription to NoveList, which is paid for by the State Library of New South Wales. So the newsletters are free through that. And so a reminder to all of you, you all have access to NoveList through the statewide database. So,
oh, thank you. That's a great point. I forgot to mention that everyone has access. So, yeah, and if I didn't mention before or call out, again, the feedback button is here. Any feedback you have, good, things you like, things you wish we had, we would love to hear it. So don't hesitate to share that with us.
and it looks like there's a question around the media call-outs, including can they be mentions in podcasts, or do they need to be more traditional news outlets?
Oh, that's a great point. We've actually been exploring and talking about maybe doing mentions based on podcasts. So yes, we would love to know what podcasts that you tune into regularly. We would have to think about how to get that data, but what we've been trying to do is just find out how much interest there is, and if there's sufficient interest, then rest assured we will find a way to do it.
And there's another question about in the Learn Centre there was a link about linking to your catalogue. They'd like Rebecca would like a little bit more information around that. Another Rebecca.
Oh, that's a great question. Let me just type in a book and I'll show you. Oops, not that book. That's a great question. There are a couple of options. I'm just clicking on one so you can see. I clicked on New Kid. I love that book. Just popped right in my brain. But one thing you can do is, depending on the kind of catalog you have, you can get some functionality that we call on the shelf. And so you can make sure that your readers can see whether or not you have a book available, but you also can activate a link from NoveList to your catalog too. So if that's something that your library would be interested in, just send us a feedback, and you'll see that's another way to do it here. This link that I'm hovering over can take your users from from NoveList to your library's catalog. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, you can either send an email to me, the letter K, Stewart at EBSCO.com, or to feedback, and we can help you get that set up.
There's another question about the quickest way to find the correct language to use to search for themes.
I think themes, if you want to get there most directly, you could just go to that themes page and then click right into these as we did with horror. And each of these are hyperlinked so that you can go right to that particular theme. In this case, it was Don't Go In There. And you'll see if you start to learn those themes, you can search for them using that TH code, that 2-letter field code. Did that answer your question?
Good. And I've just asked if there's any more questions for you. I really appreciated the way that you highlighted how useful NoveList is for looking for children's material as well.
Oh, good.
I think
I'm very glad to
that's a good
hear
reminder because, yes, some other 2-letter combinations for use in the search bar.
Right. I alerted you to those. We went to learn how to use NoveList. There is a section on field codes that's here. There are a couple things. There's a search strategy. There's also a list that I had pulled up. Let's see if I can make this bigger. So you can see this list of lots of just whole different kinds of ways that you might want to take advantage of those 2-letter field code searching. So this will certainly get you started. This is what we call a cheat sheet, but we also actually have all the field codes over here on the left. It's the full list. So if you wanted to look at that, it's so more detailed than you might want, but it's a great way just to kind of play around and just see what makes sense. This one is very just kind of hitting the highlights, just really kind of short, and again, just the kinds of things that get asked most often. So we tried to give several different access points to those field code pieces of information, just depending on how much or how little you want or need. And you'll see that there's a video. Almost everything in NoveList, we've got either short, really on-point tutorials. We also have quite a few videos of things with some tutorials that give you some screenshots like the one that you see here. So we've got quite a few things presented in different ways. And I'm going to go back to that Learn page and just hover over it while folks are thinking about other questions so you can see where you might get access to some of those things. So here's our YouTube playlist is here. You'll see that there's some tips, all different kinds of things that we just want to find different ways to show you things that you might not have noticed. Because I don't know about you, but in NoveList, I always had one thing in mind, and I sometimes tuned other things out. So I wanted to make sure that you had one place to come back to in which you could just make sure that you're seeing and taking advantage of everything that that might be of interest to you. Oh, and since you mentioned children, Ellen, we've actually got kind of side by side with that Learn page. You'll see this on the left. There's these are all hyperlinked, but we have an Educate page also really geared toward those who work with children so that you can go right to kind of a subject material for lessons, for finding just right books for pleasure reading, taking advantage of those for fans of lists and other components of popular culture that we know kids are interested in, and then finding books in which kids see themselves reflected in the literature. So all of that hopefully will be helpful to you as well.
That sounds great. It looks like we don't have any more questions coming through, although if anyone does have a question, I don't want to say type quickly and make someone really anxious. But if you could kind of type your question reasonably quickly, and typos are okay, that would be terrific. But if people don't have any more questions, people are already thanking Kathy because, well, applause really doesn't count when everyone's got their microphones muted. So I would say, Kathy, make sure you have a look at the chat because there is a stream of thanks coming through now. But thank you so much
lovely.
for this. This was fabulous.
Thank you.
I definitely learned some things, and I'm thinking from some of the comments other people did too. And I look forward to see if people are volunteering to be NoveList advisors, and if we can get some local media mentions on there as well for some works,
would
that
love
would be
that.
terrific.
Would love both those things. And please feel free to share my email, Ellen, and anyone who has follow-up questions, just send them my way, and I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy.
My pleasure.
Now, we'll have a couple of minutes where people can talk about a recent true crime or horror reading, watching or listening. Please don't mention the plot. Talk about the emotions and other appeal characteristics. It really will just be 3 minutes. So at 10:40, I'll close this session and start the next session. In case you're wondering about why the sessions need to change, Blue Jean slices video recordings at 2 hours, and I don't want someone's presentation later this morning getting cut in a piece. And it'll be very helpful to have Kathy's as a separate recording for people to be able to look at later on. So, have people been reading true crime or horror for preparation for today? The silence on chat is quite alarming, actually. Okay, thanks so much, Kathy. Great to see some true crime coming into the mix too. I realise this isn't quite the same as standing next to someone and talking to them in the Metcalf, but it's what it is these days. Okay, what I'm going to do now is turn off this recording and